Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe. Welcome all you cool ghouls and friendly fiends. Once again, it is the House of the Unusual podcast. I'm your host, Joe Pavlansky. With me, as always, is the maestro of mail order mysteries, Eddie Guevara. And also with us tonight is horror magician extraordinaire Chuck Caputo. Gentlemen, how's it going?
All right.
Fantastic over here, brother. I'm in the Sunshine State right now.
Got all that nice weather. Well, I tell you what, we got nice weather up here now, too.
Well, I was actually hunting treasure down here, brother. I was trying to see if I could hit the, science and pirate ship off the coast of Florida,
Yeah, bring us back some gold bars.
Yeah, it was definitely. I was figuring I could probably lift up about a ton of gold bars, and I'll go over there, spread some, and give some to the king of the sea monkeys.
There we go. Yeah, I talked to Todd the other day. He said he's doing well, recovery's going good. So I was pressuring him to get him on the podcast soon. So he said give it a few weeks, and his Royal Sea Monkey Highness he'll be on hopefully.
All right.
Yeah, he told me the same thing. I think he's there, he finished punishing the monkeys that, were just not being good people or good servants during the time of his, they thought it was his demise, But, they didn't know he was coming back and stronger. Remember, he has more than 9 lives. He is the king of the sea monkeys.
Little did they know.
Little did they know.
Well, hey, before we get into our conversation today, man, let's give a shout out to some friends of the House of the Unusual. And we know that Christmas time's right around the corner, so we're going to give everybody out there some ideas and some websites to hit up if they need some unique gifts for their loved ones, or even if they want to send them to us here at House of the Unusual. Hey, we're always willing for gifts, right? I mean, I'll take it anytime.
Oh, yeah.
But hey, definitely head over to mymoviemonsters.com. That is home of Scary Monsters magazine. Number 124, the Chilly Thrillers and Frosty Frights issue is up for pre-order. They do have 2 covers for this issue. It's not going to be a usual thing. This is just a one-time offer. So the one cover has the James Arness as the Thing, and the other cover, which is the newsstand cover, has the 1980s Thing on it. So if you pre-order, or if you subscribe, you'll get the classic cover. The newsstand edition is from the 1980s Thing, and both covers are absolutely fantastic. I do believe they'll be offering both on the website, so you might want to pick up both because the artwork by Scott Jackson is absolutely beautiful. And also, you could check out their website for a lot of other monster toys, model kits, and back issue magazines. Even some new horror and sci-fi magazines are out, so definitely check them out, mymoviemonsters.com. Our buddy over at Stupid Comics Magazine has number 5 out, and it is the Halloween edition with a Frankenstein monster on the cover, along with Igor and the Bride of Frankenstein. It is a great magazine. It's a mixture of mad and cracked. You could also get all the back issues there for a very good price. So definitely some cool stocking stuffers there. So you might want to check them out. And that's Stupid, spelled STOOPID, stupidcomicsmagazine.com. Also, if you're in the market or you got some friends that like magic or mentalism, stuff like that, check out our buddy Dave Haversatt's site at 1878press.com, 1878press.com. Tons of books there. If you can't find what you're looking for, get a hold of him. He'll probably be able to find it for you. Also, as we were just mentioning, our buddy Todd over at Sea Monkey Kingdom. Everybody under their Christmas tree needs some sea monkeys, and he got what you need. There's tons of different combination packs there. They got T-shirts, greeting cards. So if you want to send out some Christmas sea monkey greeting cards, he definitely has them there for you. There's looks like 8 to choose from, actually 10 to choose from, and artwork is absolutely fantastic. There's different kind of aquariums there. There's some feeding and growth packets, so definitely check them out at sea-monkeys.com. Also, if you need some mail order items, check out houseoftheunusual.com. Right up on the top, you'll see the shop button. Click that. You'll come to the site where it shows our magic line. There's a hoodie there for House of the Unusual and some really cool mail order gifts. You got a silent dog whistle. You can even get a surprise package. Eddie will send you, gosh only knows what, man. Might even be an empty box like he's known to send some of us. So, you could also get the 7-foot You Control Monster Ghost. There's some posters on there and a lot of cool stuff. So definitely check that out. You could also join our free forum on there and join in the conversation that we're having. Check out some of the collections that people are putting up. There's some great pictures of on there. So that's all we have for our friends of the show. You could also find the links in the podcast description wherever you are listening to us on. And we want to just give a real quick thank you for everyone out there listening to us and tuning in every week, listening to us. And if you're enjoying our conversations, please give us a good review because that does help us out a lot. All right, so now that's out of the way, we're going to turn it over to our buddy Chuck Caputo, horror magician extraordinaire. Chuck, brother, what's going on?
All right, man. Pretty good. I'm wrapping up a lot of shows. I'm getting a little feedback here. Let me.
You're the magician, Chuck. You're the magician. You're always going to have that. You know that.
How's that now? It's a little better.
Sounds good, yeah.
I've been wrapping up a lot of shows, and I'll be getting into my Christmas. And I'm working on a couple new things for the House of the Unusual as far as the magic goes. The thing that the viewing audience, the listening audience does have to remember that, almost all these effects are all built by myself. They're all handmade. We're not purchasing them from a foreign country or something. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. But you know what? But there's something I'm working on right now with spirit slates, man. It's like really, really cool. So I'll be sending down Eddie a couple of sets probably within the next week or so. And my wife is retiring this Friday. She just turned 65 yesterday, and she's retiring like 3 days later. By the grace of God, she's retiring. She's been a registered nurse, Joe, for 31 years.
So wow. Well, happy
man.
belated birthday.
That's the best thing. I love it. I love to hear that, Chuck.
Yeah, happy belated birthday, Sherry, and congratulations on the retirement this Friday. I'm sure it's well deserved, especially this day and age.
Yeah, very, very hard all these years, So you know what, we want to try and have some fun, and she can actually come on some shows with me, which would be pretty nice because I'm getting tired of talking to a rabbit,
Well, you know what, we would love to have her on the podcast too. I'm sure she could tell us some great stories that have happened in the hospital, and I'm sure she has some hilarious stories.
That would be great sometime in the near future. You know what? I think we can put her on, and she would love it, man. It'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, Chuck, you want to tell everyone you got a few. You're on YouTube. You have a YouTube channel, and you're also on House of the Unusual's YouTube channel, where you have some awesome videos on there for magic. Absolutely. You want to tell everyone out there a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to see some of my inventions or my videos of my collectible magic, you know what, the stuff is really vintage props that I use, the antique magic, and the principles are so old that they're new. What I would recommend is to the House of the Unusual because probably more than likely Eddie has it through the house. So go ahead and click on there and just, check onto the videos, and there's some fantastic stuff on there. And if you can't find what you're looking for on there, then you could visit my wife's her YouTube channel, which is Sherry Caputo. It's spelled Cheri Caputo, and there's a bunch of different, we probably put up a video a week. I got so much magic, man, that you wouldn't believe it. So I like to highlight it, and I'm always building something too. So, what I like to put, I like to demonstrate stuff. I like to, talk, and I like to demonstrate things.
Awesome. So Eddie, man, you are down in Florida right now, and you've got some exciting stuff going on down there, and some exciting stuff coming up in the next few days. So you want to give us a little hint about what's going on?
Uh-oh.
Yes, sir. This is big. It's big, and it's all courtesy of Mr. Chuck Caputo. You see, Chuck wanted me to go on an adventure. So I talked to him, and then my friend Jimbo Gray told me to do the same. I came down to Florida and I found out that not far from my mom's house is the famous Coral Castle. This is the castle that some guy who weighs about 98 pounds, he lifted with his bare bones. I mean, he lifted up a 1-ton gate. I hear that he carried rocks on his back and he built this thing overnight. So I'm actually going to go and explore it. What I found really interesting is that this is a legendary castle that appeared in Leonard Nimoy's In Search of back in the 70s, has appeared in countless history books. What they call the unsolved mysteries on everything under the sun. And there's quite a few people here that don't know what the heck I was talking about, even though they've been living down here for 30 years, you know. And I thought it was funny the way they have a legend around their house and they don't know. So I'm going to go tomorrow and uncover that legend. And then we're going to film a special edition. See, we're trying to create our own House of the Unusual events or something. And we're going to film this, and I'm going to do a good filming of the area and stuff. And then we'll try to do our first show, our first mysteries show. And, all you guys, of course, Joe and Chuck. Joe was always the narrator. You know, if you guys heard, he runs the show. And then Chuck is fantastic. One of the greatest tricks that Chuck actually helped me in coming down here is, in order to save airplane fees and not have to carry a baggage, he made my luggage disappear. And when I got to Fort Lauderdale, he made it appear again. It was fantastic, man. I didn't have to carry anything from there to here. So, Chuck, thanks for that.
Hey. Hey, always willing to help. I'm so excited you're going to see Coral Castle, Eddie. You're gonna be amazed, And I'm kind of curious what your opinion is about this. If this, like you said, this little 98-pound guy, even with his hoists and with his come-alongs and his fulcrums, if he could have done this on his own, I mean, it's just hard to believe, man. You were going to be blown away.
Well, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to ask to see, because I think there's tour guides that you go there.
Yep.
According to what you told me, Chuck, I'm unaware of what's going on. It's been closed. Funny as it may sound, it only opens between Thursday and it closes on Sunday. So it's not open Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday,
Wow.
So that itself is kind of weird. I would have gone today to it. So what I'm going to do is when I get there, I'm going to try to, take advantage of it. Now, the thing that's really funny is I think my brother, he told me he lives about maybe half a mile away from it.
Wow.
It was dark at night tonight. I couldn't get to see it because I was by his house. My brother just got a new apartment there, like a condo they got. So it's new to me. I haven't been in this area in about 4 years. But it was kind of interesting that it's so close. It's approximately 36 minutes, according to the GPS from my mom's house. So Coral Castle is something which is exciting. I mean, my favorite part down here is St. Augustine, because St. Augustine, it's the town that was built for Joe. It has a cemetery in the center of town, a small old cemetery with tombstones that go back to the 1800s.
Wow.
And Joe, I know when Joe says when he comes down here, he loves all the ghost tours and stuff, right, Joe?
Oh, that would be fantastic. And I did give Coral Castle a call and gave them a heads up that you are coming down there, so they have all their people on standby. So I said, beware, Eddie from House of the Unusual is on his way, and he's going to have a million questions. He'll have a phone out recording, and they were calling up the National Guard and everybody else to stand by.
Yeah.
But
Coral Castle would be really cool. It's one of the places I've always wanted to visit. And Chuck, you said, I think last podcast you visited down there before. Is that correct?
Yes, that was 2 years ago on my birthday. My birthday's January 25th, and we were there 2 years ago. I tell you what, man, that was the best birthday present I ever had. It was just unreal, man. I was so excited to see that because just like Eddie said, this has been in search of, actually, it was an episode 1980. So I've been trying to go for over 40 years, so my wife, she wanted to go down to Miami. So I told her, well, let's go to Coral Castle because it's very close to it, And so, so that's what we did. And it was on my birthday. It was so cool. It was great.
Oh, someone's got a phone call. That's Coral Castle calling in.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
they're calling. They're calling to see if Joe's coming down. Now, I could tell you something. I went to St. Augustine last year, and I was trying to bring up in one of those ghost tours. I was trying to see if I can bump with Leonard Nimoy. Apparently, he never showed up. I wanted to see if he could do the on the searching episode or in search of we were going to create for House of the Unusual, and it didn't work out, Chuck. So I think you're going to have to take his place.
Hey, that's okay, man.
How big is that place? The whole, I guess, the whole property of Coral Castle. Do you know how big it is?
You know what? It's kind of hard to say, but it takes about a 45-minute tour to get through. I mean, they do
Oh,
stop
wow.
they do stop at each part and they tell the history, and so forth. So it takes about a 45-minute tour. I mean, it looks like a fort almost, the best way I could say it. It's like it's like a fort that's built out of coral, and and you go from section to section, and just like Eddie said, the door itself, which is not working right now, it actually collapsed about 20 years ago, and there were some students in from the engineering place down there in Florida. They came in and they had fixed it, and then it collapsed again. So it's just like sitting there. But that door is 9 tons alone. And
Wow.
and so when that thing was working, Joe, like a young child is on video with like one hand, they could push that door. It would actually revolve. I mean, that's how perfectly balanced that Ed Leedskalnin had this thing, And there's other stones that are 20 tons, 30 tons that form the wall. I mean, it's just unreal. I mean, it is really something to see. And in his workshop upstairs, he was like a little monkey. He would climb up these steps that he had embedded into the wall of the workshop to get to his little bed that's hanging from the ceiling, like it's almost like a netted cot type of thing. But he would climb up these little steps he actually built into the wall. I mean, he was a very wiry little man, and it's just unreal, man. Believe, and nobody really knows how he did this for sure. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. Like he did use pulls, pulleys and block and tackle and so forth there. But I mean, is that all he used? Because like a 98-pound guy can only exert so much energy. I mean, I kind of find it hard to believe that he just did this, that particular technique.
Wait a second, Joe. Didn't you tell me you helped him? That you would do the magic and let him, the rocks, you lift up your arms and
I would levitate. I tell you what, I'd love to be a tour guide down there, man. If I ever moved to Miami, oh, that would be a dream job, a part-time little thing to do for free, man. I'll do it for free.
I tell you what, I'm looking at some photos online of it, and it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. It looks almost like a huge, yeah, you're right, like a fortress castle type thing, and
Right.
like mixed, and then the inside's like a garden with all these stone structures around. There's one that looks like a moon almost, one
Right.
that looks like the planet Saturn. I mean, it's really amazing.
Right. If you look closely, Joe, he has every planet that we know of in there. Some are hidden, some are not, and I think the north wall has a hole drilled through it. And if you look through there at night, you can see the North Star. You can see Polaris. It's like in perfect alignment. I mean, the man knew astronomy like you wouldn't believe. You know what I think he only went to like third grade, but he read a lot. I mean, he was always at the library. They said he was a very intelligent man.
Well, I don't know about knowing every planet because I checked it out. They don't have planet Zero, according to Marvin the Martian. They did. Yeah, it is. You know what? No kidding. Kidding aside, Chuck, it's very elaborate. And the fact is, I know I did read recently some things about it that they were saying that a lot of the rocks, even though they seem so small, they're kind of like porous, so
Right.
It's not as heavy as one would think. One thing that brings to Coral Castle, Chuck, I don't know if you ever been to St. Augustine, Florida, but in St. Augustine, there's the only castle known in the North America and South America, or not South America. I think South America has many different things, but one of the things that and if you guys hear a car speeding across the outside, which is very rare to happen, but if there was any noises, because obviously I'm not in my right location today, But anyway, the thing
He's
I was going
on
to
location.
I am on location next to Coral Castle. There's some things that apparently we have to, go to in order to get to the destination. But the point I was going to say is that there is a castle. It's called Castle of St. Marcos. And it's in St. Augustine. The walls are like 6-7 feet thick. And the way that was done is crushed seashells. And when you say Coral Castle, I wonder if, I mean, I haven't been there, Chuck, but I wonder if it was the same process as when they made the castle, where they crushed seashells with sand or whatever.
Right.
And they made this huge, deep walls. Now, that castle was never taken by the pirates or anything. I think it was run by the Spaniards. Mm-hmm. And the castle stood its ground, and it's a beautiful tourist attraction. In fact, one thing, Joe, that you would like if you ever go to St. Augustine is that there's a part of the castle where in the 1900s, early 1900s, they opened up a part that they hadn't been in, like 200, 300 years. And there were some skeletons they found like in a dungeon part of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can actually go in the castle and you're going through this little entranceway, like you have to bend down to go in. It's like 4 feet tall. And inside it tells you that they found the human remains in that side. But you see, the thing with St. Augustine is that 90%, I think, of the money they make there in tourists is through ghost tours. They have the Ripley's Believe It or Not ghost tour. They have the ghost tour for the Fountain of Youth. In other words, this also, they claim that that's the area where Ponce de Leon found the Fountain of Youth when he came searching for America. It's really just a museum inside. I know I fell for the thing because I'm like, I wonder what it is in there. I thought I was going to see like a waterfall or something. And there was absolutely nothing, man. It was just a walking-in museum that was actually outdoors, and it's shown like whatever. It was not what I thought. But, even the building for Ripley's Believe It or Not, you could tell it's like 100, 200 years old. They had the first school there. They have the oldest building, the oldest everything. So it's really a beautiful town, and they make all their money through ghost tours, or they make majority of the money. So I know Joe, if he goes there and his wife says, "Okay, Joe, let's go," I have a feeling he'll cleave to one of those tombstones, and he'll be like, "No, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving."
Well, I absolutely love. I've always loved castles, and over the past maybe 20 years or so, I think I visited maybe 2 or 3. One in Germany, I think one was in Canada, and I don't remember the other one, but ever since I was young, I've always fascinated with castles, especially how because they always have secret passages and everything, and they're just very mysterious. And then as you get older and start really researching castles, you see why these secret passages were used and really what castles were used for. But one of the things I was hoping to bring up today and talk about was, and I don't think we've ever really touched on it, was the kind of like the genre of fantasy, fantasy films, books, role-playing games, because I've always felt a connection with the world of fantasy, mainly because it always involved medieval periods, and there's always a castle involved, whether it's a dragon storming a castle, or an army storming a castle, or there's some type of drama unfolding in a castle. They're always in there. And it was I was always a big Lord of the Rings fan. There's tons of castles mentioned in the books, and then if you watch the movies, they have just some beautiful, castles, and then the cities that surround them and everything that goes on in them. They're just absolutely amazing. So the other day, I was one of my buddies sent me an article that I seen is going to be showing on Amazon this Thursday, and it's called The Wheel of Time. And they were books by Robert Jordan. There's 14 of them. He did, I believe it was 1 through 11, and then after he died, then Brandon Sanderson finished off the novels with 12, 13, and 14. And they began in 1990, and they're a high fantasy novel series. And I didn't really know too much about them. I've never read them. I don't think I've ever heard of them. But I tell you what, when I watched the trailer for The Wheel of Time, and it started getting me back in this, groove of, fantasy worlds, and and looking at different fantasy things and wanting to read more fantasy. So I'm really excited about this show coming on Thursday, because I know they're going to have some great castles in there. There's some dragons and, magic and all that stuff. So have you guys ever been into anything like that? Anything on the fantasy genre, like Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons, anything like that?
I tell you. Oh, go ahead, Eddie. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm kind of disappointed there because I didn't know dragons weren't real. And now I think Joe just kind of ruined it for me. Thanks a lot, Joe.
There's one waiting for you in Coral Castle. But what about you, Chuck? Have you ever gotten into anything in the fantasy genre?
Well, the only thing that I've gotten into, two of my favorite authors in the whole world, okay, and it's all based on fantasy, but some really good stuff. Jules Verne. I mean, I've read just about everything they've ever written, and I'll tell you what, their stories are fantastic. It's very thought provoking, and it's all based on some amazing fantasy. I mean, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and the Invisible Man. I mean, it's just some amazing stuff. I mean, so I've always been into like sci-fi and things of that nature with fantasy, but those two are probably the best sci-fi authors. I mean, they're fantastic.
Yeah, they do definitely have some good, because there's different kind of subgenres of fantasy out there. You got your high fantasy in the middle ages
right.
time period. Then you got like the Jules Verne type stuff where you might deal with some large creatures or
right.
Different other aspects of fantasy type tropes. But I like that too. But I've always really liked the medieval period times. I always thought it was very fascinating, and especially how people lived back then. I mean, completely different than there. And if you lived to be 20 back then, you're considered an old man because you get a coffin. Like, well, start digging his grave.
Yeah.
Hey, that's something. I was going to tell you guys. I didn't cut you, Chuck. Did I?
No. Go ahead. That's fine.
No, I was going to say, when you're saying, the castles and stuff, I wanted to say that I've been drawn to castles since a very young kid. But I think my introduction to the genre was not really sci-fi or fiction. I think it came from watching Abbott and Costello, watching all the haunted houses, from the 1950s and 40s, all the horror films, which always consisted, like The Fall of the House of Usher with Vincent Price.
Yeah.
Was always a Victorian house, and every haunted house had a knight in shining armor. Even in the cartoons, from the Flintstones to, anything that had haunted house to Mickey Mouse, you always had the knight in shining armor and the castle. So I think my brought up in the genre was not as much as in the sci-fi, which of course I did like Lost in Space, and a lot of like Jules Verne, like you said, those. And, I've watched a lot of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, all this stuff, but that doesn't really have castles and stuff in it, But the castles, I think, because every time I had the playset, if you guys remember in the 1970s, and I know, Joe, you're too young for that, but Chuck would remember that it was very popular to buy like a fort with the army soldiers inside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you always were able to buy this box forts that were, plastic and stuff, and you had a lot of them were castles.
Oh, yeah.
The drawbridge.
Marx did those, wasn't it? Wasn't by Marx?
Marx did it.
Yep.
Tommy, I think, did it. They also had the Weebles.
Where
they wobble and they don't fall down. They had like a castle. Which
I remember.
They don't. That's right. They didn't fall down either.
Because Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. And the little ghost Weeble. Well, I got the Weebles haunted house many years ago. And I think all that, and one of the games too that didn't have a castle, but it had the Victorian / monster ghost to it, was Witch. Oh. And if you remember, and there was also Ghost Castle, which was like a knockoff of Witch or whatever. Each of them, benefit, but you were like walking through this, even the Haunted Mansion by Lakeside, which was based on the Disney's Haunted Mansion. And so the castle part of that I think I came involved and grew up in is what brought me to the genre, was mostly the toys and what I was exposed to in the 1970s. So I always thought castles were cool. And, dragons were there too, but Disney mostly did dragons. But you guys have to understand one thing. When you grew up in the 1970s watching Disney was geared, maybe in the 50s, it was geared to like both genres, but both sexes, male, female. But as we in the 70s, all you really had was more like a feminist type of genre for people, because you had Little Mary Poppins, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, all those different movies, Little Herbie, but it was all kind of like, most of it was Sleeping Beauty, Bambi, and you're growing up in the 70s, and you're a little kid, a little boy in the neighborhood, you're more into monsters and Abbott and Costello and stuff. So I don't think Disney's fantasy world with the dragons and stuff really intrigued me as a kid. I don't remember really introducing to dragons until later.
Right.
Probably 13, 14 years old, you started seeing dragons. But the only dragon I swear I remember is the one with Bugs Bunny, where the flame goes out and then Bugs Bunny uses a lighter to light it for him. That's about the one I remember, which is so funny.
I tell you what I always wanted to do, and I don't know anywhere that you can do it, but it would be a dream of mine, is to go to some old castle, to their wine cellar. And I'm not a wine drinker, but man, to find a few 100-year-old bottle of wine and crack it open with a good cigar and just sit in the wine cellar and just kind of think of sit there with a nice cigar and a glass of wine and just think about everything that happened in that castle when it was up and running, and everything that happened surrounding that castle. Because there's a lot of history, and that would be like our White House today or our Buckingham Palace. Those were the big political centers of the time, and just think of everything, that all the treachery and debauchery that went on in there. It would just be really cool to just sit there and have a good cigar, a nice glass of wine, and talk about what happened while you're sitting in the wine cellar or sitting room of the castle. I think that'd be cool.
Absolutely, man. And I bet a lot of those are probably what you would consider haunted. I'm sure different things that people hear, with certain hours of the night, because like you said, they're hundreds of years old and they've had a lot of death in there. There's a lot of people that died, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what they used. Like, a lot of the secret passages and all that were used, if they needed to exit rooms, or if they needed to get into a room and, kill somebody and get out without somebody seeing. It was, there was a lot of stuff that went on in castles, and they were just really, really cool. And when I was younger, I always thought, man, it would be so cool to live in a castle. I want to live in a castle when I get older. And then, once you get older and you see, oh yeah, if I only had, a few $100 million, I could get my own castle.
Joe, I got to tell you this, my friend. I was just about to mention that. It's so funny that you brought it up. If you look at the, real estate sections of castles and stuff, they have sold castles in probably the last 5-6 years. They sold one in England for $1,500,000, which is the cost of a house up here in North Jersey.
Yeah, let me pull that out of my sock and I'll put a down payment.
You will get a mortgage, and you could probably like $50,000, $100,000. You would be able. The only problem is, who the heck is going to live in a castle that's 1,000 years old?
Hear that, everyone out there? Donate to House of the Unusual, Joe's Castle Fund. Yeah, we want to buy our own castle.
Hey, would you have to bring us up the code? Would you have to bring us up the code, or got to be code enforcement? That'd be kind of rough, wouldn't it?
Maybe not in Europe. Remember, depending on how old it is. But Chuck, this is for you. One thing that I forgot to mention that had a castle that probably also introduced us in castles was not the Garden of Make-Believe with the two girls, but Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. And you know what? That was all filmed right here in Pittsburgh. I was pretty close to getting on there. I actually talked to the mailman on the phone about 20 years ago, Mr. McFeely, and so we were discussing possibly coming on there, and that was in the final years of Mr. Rogers. He was starting to kind of go into semi-retirement, but it never came to fruition. That would have been cool. Like if I would have done some magic on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Oh, that would have been really cool. I would have loved to just seen the stage where they, did all the puppetry and all that. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, they got a museum here in Pittsburgh, Joe, the Heinz History Museum, and my wife and I just went there a few months ago, and they got a big display of Mr. Rogers. They have the original puppets. They have a mannequin of Mr. Rogers there. It was so cool that I actually went I snuck, like the barrier. I crawled underneath it, and I was next to Mr. Rogers, and I had my wife hurry up and snap a couple pictures.
You're playing with the puppets back there and making them talk to each other.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It was so cool, man. It was. You know what? He was a nice man. There was no controversy with this guy. I mean, he was married like 50 years. He was just a good man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. You look back. You have him and Bob Ross, and you just don't have people like that on TV anymore.
No, you don't. But yeah, but that all took place right here in Pittsburgh.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was filmed out there.
Yeah, WQED is literally. I'm about 19 miles east of Pittsburgh downtown, so probably about 20 minutes from my house was where it was all filmed. It was
Now at that museum. Do they still have the? I'm guessing it would probably be made out of wood or whatnot, but of the castle, do they still have that anywhere?
Yeah, they have a mock-up of it, you know what I mean? I guess they remade a version of it, and it's like really cool. It's got the trolley and everything, and you know what? It just has a lot of Pittsburgh memorabilia. If you ever do make it to Pittsburgh, you know what? Make sure you guys stop at that museum. There's a lot of trolley cars that Pittsburgh had. There's an amusement park here called Kennywood Park, and they have like the original racer cars, the roller coaster cars are in there. I mean, it's like really cool. If you like football, they got a whole section of the Steelers. There's one floor of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and and so forth. I mean, I mean, Pittsburgh does have a lot of history. It was really cool. You could like literally spend the whole day in there. There's like I think 5 or 6 floors, and there's little kiosks where you can eat and so forth. I mean, it was a rainy day we went, so we stayed in there probably 3 hours. I mean, it was really neat.
You know what? I think I've been to the art museum out there, whatever their big art museum is.
Right.
And that was, I think it was, man, during maybe 8th grade or something. So, almost 30 years ago or so, 25, 30 years ago. And then a few years back, me and my wife went out there and the museum was closing, but we got to go in the submarine that they have. We took a little walk through it.
Oh,
and that
yeah.
was really cool.
Yeah, that was probably down at Station Square, And yeah, you know what? It's they got some really cool stuff. The zoo is built up really nice. I mean they really built things up. Hey, hey, speaking of the zoo, there's a toy that I was able to get, which I'm sure Eddie probably knows about. Joe, you're probably a little too young for this, but at the Pittsburgh Zoo, most major zoos had a vending machine. When I was a kid, I actually put a quarter in, and I had this thing made, and I don't know what I did with it. It was called Mold-A-Rama. And it was a liquid injection system. When you put a quarter in, you pick what little animal that you wanted the molds to make, and these molds would come together, and a plastic liquid goop would be shot inside there like an injection thing, and then the molds would come apart, and there'd be like an armature. It would knock that little creature down through the slot. And what I had made was a gorilla, and it was stamped at Pittsburgh Zoo. Now, this had to be 50 years ago, and I don't remember what I did with it. Of course, I was a little kid, but I did get one online. It was from the Brookville Zoo from another state, but it's the exact same gorilla. And yeah, but it was called Mold-A-Rama. Most major cities, their zoos particularly, had these. Eddie, are you familiar with it?
It sounds crazy when you're saying that, Chuck. I'm kind of familiar with it, but no, I never saw one growing up.
I thought you were going to say you had the actual thing in your house to make.
No. What I wanted to ask you, Joe, I mean, Chuck, was this when you were going to be in the Mr. Rogers neighborhood? Was that around the time Joe still had a pacifier in his mouth?
It probably was.
Well, that was about 20 years ago. So what, Joe, you're 44. You were in your early 20s, I guess.
Yeah.
No, pacifier time was over, Joe.
Well, yeah, that one, I don't know. It was just last week. So yeah, I just got off of it, and I was weaned off of it. It only took 41 years, but I made it.
But that is kind of hard to believe, because I've been doing magic for about 38 years. So when I started, Joe, you were 4 years old. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I could have theoretically performed at your little birthday party when you were a little kid.
You just might have.
Let me ask you a question. Maybe you gave him the little gorilla you had.
Yeah. I'll have to look and see if I have it. Yeah, you were probably around then doing magic. Little did you know.
But I get some guys, who send me emails once in a while, age in their 40s, to go, Chuck, you did my birthday, 30 years ago. And I'm trying to remember. I said, oh boy, I don't remember, and I mean, but that is kind of nice. I get people contacting me from many, many years ago, and still to this day, when people hire me, they'll say, well, you did a show at my neighbor's house. I'm right next door, so we'll see you next Friday. I don't remember. It's a
Yeah.
big blur. So I tell them, whoa, let's go back. Let's start on the Parkway. What do I do? What exit do I get up? People think I remember these things. I cannot remember. I can't.
What it was funny is that my the old house I used to live in about 5 years ago, my neighbor, her father, he was a kind of like his little side job. I don't know if he did it full time or not, but he was a clown and a magician, and he had done it. I mean, his whole life. He was he's in his 60s, and I remember him from, gosh, maybe 5 or 6 years old doing parties.
Yeah.
Doing his clowning and his magic and all that, and he was very good at it. And he took it very seriously. He loved doing it. He loved bringing enjoyment to children, great. And he did nursing homes, hospitals, stuff like that. But it was funny because now I'm living next to his daughter, who is a little bit older than me. But when he would come and visit, I would help him, do yard work. We talk and all that, hang out, have a beer together. And it was, I'm thinking like, just 30 years ago, you were doing, magic at my birthday party.
Yeah.
Now here we are, hanging out.
It's hard to believe. It really is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, time flies. Chuck, what my favorite thing was, and I remember almost all the bathrooms used to go, I guess, like in malls, was the mechanical servant. They look like those sacred vending machines.
Oh, those were so cool.
Yeah, I used to always like going there, and for like 75 cents, one of my favorite things was the magic mouse.
The mouse was so cool.
Yeah, I would get it. And I still have some. Actually, I was so intrigued with, especially going to there's a store that even Dr. Boyajin and me mentioned. There was two guys up in the Paramus area of New Jersey, and they used to have a lot of, like, anytime you went to stores, Corvettes or two guys at the time, and I'm sure Chuck knows Corvettes, so he remembers them.
Sure.
Chuck the other Corvettes. Chuck, you remember that saying on the TV commercials? When you went inside, there was another store here called Alexander's in the Paramus area, and you would go inside, and they always had 5-10 vending machines. The 50 cents, 25 cents vending machine with the capsules, and they had the coolest toys in the world, man. And I was so intrigued by that when I opened up my magic shop, I bought a couple of vending machines, which I still have. And I loved the fact, and I would buy these mega different things. But my favorite it's so funny, Chuck, because I'm sure you remember this one. There was always one that had the little miniature spy camera from comic books on it.
Oh, yeah.
And no matter what you did, no matter what, you would try to get that thing. And, of course, the camera itself wouldn't fit through the slot in the bottom anyway. They would put it all the way in the top, and they make you think you were going to get the camera for 25 cents,
That's something. Wow.
Well, I wound up getting one of the actual vending machines, and then when I got the vending machine, I wanted to get the paper with the camera on it, the one they advertised.
Yeah.
I think I paid like $75 for that insert.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have several. I have like 10, 11 of them. All the ones as a kid that I have the inserts because I have several vending machines. But I love those vending. Now, the one you're talking about, the injection mold thing.
Yeah.
I'm having like this flashbacks, like when Joe gets his flashback about his monsters. I'm getting flashbacks like I've seen it. But
well, you know what? If you got a chance sometime, go on YouTube and search Mold-A-Rama machine. You will not. There are some videos of this thing, in its process of when it actually makes the little creature that you pick out. I mean, it's like it's an ingenious vending machine. I mean, these two molds come together, and this hose shoots this hot liquid stuff, and it kind of dries really quick. And back when I was a kid, there was a certain smell to this. I'll never forget that smell. I can't even describe it. It was like almost like rubber mixed with some kind of I can't even describe it. You know what I mean?
You know what?
50 years ago.
You know what's funny, Chuck, is you're talking about smell, and I've always loved the smell of old comic books. The pulp paper.
That's cool.
But the other day I was sitting, and I don't know why it popped into my head, but back in the 80s, and even today, I'm still a huge G.I. Joe collector. I love the old G.I. Joe, the small figures from the 80s and early 90s. Yeah. But back in, I think it was the late 80s, that and when I was young, I was everything about, all I did all day when the sun was up, I played Army, and then when the sun went down, I went inside and played GI Joes and watched. That was a big part of why I went into the military. So when I was young, I loved it, but in the late 80s, the GI Joe figures came with a little packets of face paint, and it was almost like it wasn't like a chalk or anything. It was more of like almost like a liquid.
Yeah.
And so each GI Joe figure had a little thing of face paint in it that you could use. And I remember having those when I was young and getting them, putting the face paint on and running around in the backyard and all that in the woods next to my house playing Army. For some reason, I was thinking about this the other day, and I haven't thought about it for probably 30 years, and I could smell what that face paint smells. I could smell it right now as I'm talking about it.
Isn't that crazy?
And I haven't thought about it for 30 some years probably. And I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that face paint since then, but I could smell it right now as we're talking. It's a very distinct smell. I mean, Isn't that amazing?
It is amazing.
You know something, Chuck, and you, Joe, I don't know, Joe, you might be too young, but here's the deal. First of all, when I said Chuck, you told me if I saw the machine. Well, there's two things you got to remember. One, I have a Coney Island movie up on YouTube, the YouTube channel House of the Unusual.
That's a cool video.
Yeah, the ones who see, and that was done in 1976 with a Super 8 film. In that video, Chuck mentioned a laughing woman, and it so happens I forgot about it. But I'm like, oh my gosh, there's one.
I seen it on there when it first opened up. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the funny thing. Here's another thing about smell. You guys, and I know, Chuck, you got to remember, because it was a unique smell. That was a phenomenal smell. Anytime you opened up, let's say if you had some girl in your life, not girl, I mean like some sister or cousin, when they opened up the dolls and the Halloween costumes
the
1970s,
right,
there was a funny smell that smelled phenomenal. I used to like to smell that, man. So you got my first Superman costume my aunt gave me. That smell was on the plastic.
I know what you mean.
You know what I'm talking about? That smell is unique. If you have anything from the 70s, like a doll thing, and you never open the box, and you open it up, I don't know if it was what they used to mold it with. It was like a plastic. But that smell was so good, man. I used to just like open it up and want to smell it.
Isn't that funny? After how many decades we could still, vividly recall what something smells like. I mean, that's amazing.
Really. Hey, but getting back to the vending machines, Eddie, the one thing I was always after was the little skull, and his jaw moved. It was spring loaded. It was really cool. It was very difficult to get one of those, but I did. I had to get a few when I was a kid, and it was the coolest thing because it was a really neat little skull, and his jaw moved. You pull it down, it would snap shut. It was really cool.
I have a couple of those.
Oh, I've never seen those.
Oh, they're
God, Joe, really?
Are they like? How big would they be compared to like say
size of a
quarter size?
Yeah,
I've never seen those. I don't think.
Yeah, they go back to the late '60s, early '70s. See, the thing that was cool about me, my brother, God rest his soul, he was 7 years older than me, and so the toys he had even predate me. So that's why I'm familiar with them, even like a little bit younger, even a little older than me. Because you mentioned GI Joes. He had the full size ones, Joe. I guess they were about a foot tall, and they go back to the mid '60s, so I was playing with them like in the early '70s. But he had the coolest GI Joes, man. It was unbelievable. They had, the backpacks, of course, and everything, and there was like a line, like a zip line that came with them. You could hook it up across the yard. It was really cool.
Maybe one of my good friends will send me a small skull. I don't know who may.
I knew that was coming, Chuck. Hey, Chuck. Well, listen,
Christmas is around the corner.
Yeah, I will definitely consider that. I'm going to look, and let me tell you something, though, Chuck. In my time, all the action figures when me and you were young, that they used to advertise in the East Coast were all 12-inch GI Joes.
Yeah,
one of the favorite was the Kung Fu Grip.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But one thing I'm going to tell you, and I don't know if you remember this one, but in 1972 or 73, my aunt bought me for Christmas the Leaf, I think it's Leif Erikson or something like that, the Viking. And that was like a 12-inch GI Joe figure. Came in a horse. And he was solid, man. He weighed like a good half pound.
Oh, they were built to last.
Do you remember? No, but this wasn't a GI Joe. This was called Leif the Viking, I think.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, I think you can actually see it came with a Viking helmet with the two horns, and he had a horse.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I don't know exactly what happened. I think I lost him in the fire that I had. The horse I lost probably in the 70s, but that was a solid. You would stand it up, and it was like a hard plastic,
Oh
like
yeah.
resin. You know.
Do you guys remember the $6 million man
Oh
I
yeah.
have one.
toy where you
We
could
look
look
through
through the eye? Yeah.
Yeah,
You have.
those were cool, man.
I got one about. You know when I got one, Joe? I never, as a kid, I wanted it, but obviously my mom didn't get it for me. And there was another one called Bullet Man, the human bullet.
Yeah.
It was a guy with a bullet helmet, and
Yep.
you threw him down a rope. The $6 million man, the reason they didn't get it for him, whatever reason, it was probably expensive at the time. But I was able to get one for like $75 in the box right after the 40-year-old virgin, the movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he had one in there, and I went on eBay, and the darn thing was selling, and I bought it. So I have one in a box. I should have taken it to when I met Lee Majors in one of the Chiller conventions.
Yeah, have them sign it, man.
Yeah,
Those are hard to come by anymore. A lot
Yeah.
of those 12-inch figures, aside from G.I. Joe, they're you never really see them in any
No.
stores.
I tell you what, when I was growing up, I used to love to watch the $6 million man. That was when it was current. Like maybe 1973, 74. Like there was a good friend of mine. Either I'd sleep over at my house, and we'd watch on a Friday night. I remember there was $6 million man. There was Carl Kolchak, the news reporter played by Darren McGavin. So that was called the Night Stalker. So there was, it was like those two and perhaps one or two other types of things, but it was on from like 7 o'clock. It was all star lineup. It was neat.
Chuck, when you're saying that, Chuck, back in the 70s too, when this is funny that you mentioned Night Stalker. That was my CB handle when everybody wanted to have a CB.
Night Stalker.
When they had the 23 channels before the 40 channels came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was called the Night Stalker, which is funny that you said that.
Cool.
But one thing I'm going to tell you when you say, with action figures, and I came across a flea market a couple of years ago, and shockingly as it was, some lady had no idea what she had. I see Mercury 7, which I think is the one that the first guy that went to space, what's his name? John Glenn?
Yeah.
Okay, and it had the John Glenn G.I. Joe inside. You know what? She gave it to me for $3, man.
Oh my goodness.
The full-size 12-inch John Glenn space shuttle.
Wow.
When I came home and looked it up on eBay, the darn thing was going for $800.
Oh my goodness.
And then I was also able to get one action figure that my mom never got me as a kid, and I always wanted, was the Intruder, the enemy of G.I. Joe.
I remember that.
I have him in mint in a package. I have actually two, one open and one mint. So no, Joe, you're not getting him. I will give you the skull though.
Yeah, he'll send you the skull. How's that?
Yeah,
that'll work.
Yeah, I'm not saying
Santa Guevara.
Santa Guevara.
But I mean that was phenomenal. And Chuck, let's be honest. Did you have? I don't know if you had it, Chuck, because I had it. The tent for G.I. Joe.
Oh yeah. Tent. Oh yeah. We had the pup tent. Oh, all that. It was so cool, man. Oh, it was so neat. The little knapsack with the canteen inside, and
the biggest mistake I did, man. My mom bought me when I was a kid Planet of the Apes Treehouse, and I think the box was phenomenal. In the fire that I had, the box got wet, and I threw it out. What a mistake! I still have the mint condition house with all the 5 gorillas. I mean, the Planet of the Apes, and I have the astronaut in mint condition, like they're mint. The only thing is, I've been trying to buy a box, an empty box, and the darn box, the cheapest one I found was like $50. I'm like, what? Yeah. For an empty box? But what I wanted to tell you, Chuck, that one of them, the entire house was selling on eBay for $3,200.
Oh, wow. Unbelievable.
I was like, what? I paid $19.95. Not me, my mom did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, I'll tell you, that stuff goes up. My favorite toy, absolute favorite, was the Fright Factory, also known as the Thing Maker, where you pour the goop into the mold and you put it into the heater and it would sear it, and then you dip it into the tray of water and you peel it out of the mold, and like you'd have different creepy crawlers, and it was, man, we used to play with that, my brother and I, for hours. That was so cool.
I had one of those, I think I believe it was maybe the early 80s or so. They had they obviously updated it and redid it, but yeah, those were cool. It made little creepy crawlies, and I had to chase my sister around with them and throw them around the house. And Eventually it got taken away from me because I
Let me ask
was
you
using it how I wasn't supposed to use it. But
did you guys ever? I don't know, Joe. Do you remember? Was it Shing Dings? I think it was called, or something like that.
Oh,
Shrinky Dinks. Oh man,
Shrinky Dinks. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
I
That was so
love
cool.
Shrinky Dinks. Love them.
You'd cut them out and put them in the oven, right? And they'd shrink.
Yeah, and then it would turn into like one of those heavy duty 1/2-inch thick plastic.
Yep.
Like
those were cool.
And what were the ones where they were small and you would put them in water and then in like an hour they would be fully grown?
Oh, they'd grow. Yeah.
No, but they still sell that today, Joe.
Oh, do they?
They had you can grow an alligator and
yeah.
It was like a dehydrated. In fact, what's so funny that with that same process, I think what initiated that process is when I don't know if it was the SS Adams company or what company came out with the dehydrated worm.
Right.
They remember when we had that segment with Dr. Saab that he was showing how it was like sponges.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I think started that growth thing.
But Shrinky Dinks, I don't even know. Are those even still around? Do they still sell shrink?
No,
that was over 40 years ago. Yeah, you could find them on collectible lists, I guess. How about the chloroform toys where you pull off the peel and stick? They were like a thin.
Oh, I still have a bunch of those. A few years ago at a toy shop, I found E.T., He-Man, G.I. Joe, and
those were cool.
I think Transformers, but yeah, those are very cool. They're hard to find too, especially complete.
Right? Wasn't that called the chloroform?
Yeah, chloroform.
What they call I know chloroforms, but there was one. Now that you guys say that, there was one that used to have to wet the paper. And it slid off, and it was like a clear thing, transparent thing. And
yeah.
Was that the term you're talking about, Joe?
Which one was it? No, these were just kind of like I guess I don't know if they stuck with maybe static or something, but it was like a real thin, soft vinyl plastic, and then you would put it on the real smooth board, and they would just kind of stick there. I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, man. I was totally blacked out on that. You know what I had? I had the Mickey Mouse Magic chloroform. You remember that had the spinning wheel in the center?
Yeah.
And you put the chloroform, and then when you spin it around,
color forms. That's what it was. Color forms. Yeah.
It would spin like one side would be like a Mickey hat, and then when you spin it, the other red thing was like the red and green, like from the 3D glasses. In the other side, the rabbit appeared.
Yeah, that's cool.
Do you remember the Mickey Mouse? I still have one of those. I actually got one in mint condition.
Core forms are so cool. I mean, you could you have your little own adventure on the board there. But hey guys, we're down to the last few minutes here, so we have to wrap it up, and we'll be sitting by anxiously to see Eddie's video of him running around Coral Castle as the workers chase him around and. Try to grab him as he's going crazy down there. That's what I would be doing because it looks absolutely fantastic. So we'll definitely be waiting for that video and for his update. I'm sure, check us out on the podcast next week because I'm sure that we'll be talking about Coral Castle and everything cool that happened there. But I definitely want to say a big thank you to all our listeners out there. Whatever platform you're listening to us on, please subscribe to us. Give us a good review because that does help us out tremendously and, all the algorithms and everything out there. So every week we have a new podcast, so keep checking us out and keep checking out the YouTube and the houseoftheunusual.com. And we got about a minute and a half. Chuck, any final words?
Hey, it was great walking down memory lane tonight. That was a lot of fun. Brought back a lot of memories. Eddie, have a great time tomorrow, man. Make sure you look at everything in detail. I think you're going to be blown away, my man.
Thank you very much, Joe, man. Chuck. God bless him, there, man.
Yeah, definitely keep us updated on what's going on there. And so I definitely want to see some photos. So definitely,
absolutely
text or email us some photos of it so we could live vicariously through you and your adventures down there.
Yeah, whatever you guys do, just whatever you do, please. Since I am in Coral Castle, and in case there's any sea monkeys in the gift shop or whatever, just don't tell Todd about it. I don't want him to get upset at me unless because the thing I'm really looking forward to is actually the gift shop.
Oh, I'm sure there's some really cool stuff, and
That's-
your friends here at House of the Unusual will be expecting some nice gifts from the gift shop. So
Yes, I
don't
figured
forget
that.
about us. No, but seriously, have a good time down there and take some great photos, and
yeah.
enjoy yourself and be safe and everything. And I'm sure the weather will be beautiful, and just have a good time. So, guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Everybody out there in podcast land, thanks for joining us once again. And we hope you had as much as a good time as we had tonight going down memory lane, talking about castles and toys and everything from our childhood, because we are just big kids right now. So,
True,
all right,
man.
guys, thank you for joining us, and good night.
Okay,
God
God
bless.
bless.
Good night.
Take care.
Bye-bye.